Hello. I made it back. I almost lost you.
Yeah. Did you see my DM or the direct message?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, been kind of.
Is it showing up on the right?
Yeah, it's like there's a small arrow in the corner.
Oh, there we go.
Been kind of experimenting. So
Got it.
yeah. Yeah. So it looks like the room is starting to fill up. We'll probably give it another 5 minutes. But yeah, before we get started, I just want to encourage everybody to use the chat during the talk. You'll connect with more people, add liveliness. If you hear like a really important point or something that like you agree with, be sure to show your enthusiasm. And of course, there's incentives to comment, like Jonathan and Derek said earlier. You could potentially win cash prizes. So I know, like, I would definitely comment if I were in your shoes. And yeah, definitely also use the Q&A function. This should be like an hour talk. I'm gonna try to like take breaks in between and address some questions depending on like the questions and points we hit. So we'll give it like another 5 minutes and yeah, we'll get started.
Sure. Well, I just put my social media posts, so LinkedIn and Twitter. See if
Uh,
more people come.
okay. Did you put it in the chat?
No, I just put, meaning I posted the event.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Yeah, and I literally sent my link to a couple of my friends as well. So like hopefully a lot of people show up.
Yeah. No,
I
I've
think
been posted. I think I posted 2 times before during
yeah,
last week. Yeah.
no, I'm
It's good.
excited for sure.
Cool.
Okay, so we'll give it like another 5 minutes. Um this is what Jonathan did. Jonathan's like, okay, if you guys are in the chat, like say where you're from or like what you're looking forward to in the conversation, just to show some participation. Um, yeah, so just introductions, anything while we wait another 5 minutes. Betty, where are you calling from?
I'm at home. I'm
In
in Dorchester.
Worcester?
Dorchester,
Worcester.
Boston. Yeah.
Is that near Worcester by any chance or no? Because Worcester's in Massachusetts.
Worcester. Oh, Worcester. Worcester? Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe.
I know. When I got here, I pronounced it as Worcester too. It's
Yeah.
but
Oh,
here they say Worcester.
the accent. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm in Boston in
No.
Dorchester. So near UMass Boston.
Oh,
I
okay.
live pretty close, which is
Mhm.
nice.
I was just speaking to somebody in like the one-on-one networking sessions
Hmm.
who goes to UMass Boston. Her name is Zoe. I think she'll be in the meeting.
Yeah.
I called her out, but yeah. But yeah, I my freshman summer actually I spent my internship in Somerville.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
pretty familiar with like the red line,
Yeah.
the T and everything.
Hmm.
But yeah, Boston's a cool place. I definitely enjoyed my time
Yeah. I'm from New York originally, so when I came to
there.
Boston, I was a little shell shocked. Yeah.
Really? I'm
Yeah.
from New York as well, actually.
You what?
I'm from New York
You're
as
from New
well.
York too? Yeah. Did you grow up in New York City or?
So I grew up in like the Bronx and then moved
Yeah.
to Westchester County, like when I
Okay.
was 3 or 4. So, but I went to school in the city and everything. So,
Mhm.
did you grow up in the city?
Yeah, I grew up in downtown near do you know Chelsea? The
Yeah, yeah,
Chelsea
yeah,
Midnight,
yes.
that was my neighborhood where I grew up. And then I lived when I was little, I was in Puerto Rico. So
Oh,
I was
cool.
11 and then came back to New York. Yeah. So I went to music and art, the Fame School
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah,
for
yeah.
art.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then ended up at upstate New York at Bard College.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
We're kind of getting into the tell us about yourself portion, so I'm just gonna save my questions.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
I know, right? Let's wait. Let's see if other people come.
yeah. So right now we have like 13 people. So yeah, if you're new here, remember to be active in the chat. You can tell people where you're from, what you're excited about in this meeting. It'll be a very very productive conversation. Um, yeah, I see Gaston. What's up, Gaston? And yeah, it should be very fruitful. There's a raffle on the line too. So the more you comment, um, the more likely you are to win the raffle. And yeah, we'll just give it another. I'll give it like maybe 2 minutes, just so we can get as much out of this conversation as possible.
Okay. And this is not, so I didn't realize there's a national audience.
Yeah,
It's cool.
all over.
Yeah.
If you guys are active, why don't you comment where you're from, where you're calling from, what school you go to. Gaston goes to Arkansas, North Texas. So yeah, you guys can follow Gaston's lead and just sprinkle in the comments where you're from, what you're excited about, and we'll begin in about a minute.
Okay. Yeah, and what you're interested in. Hey, Maya. Elizabeth City State University. Cool. I remember I wanted to study psychology. And then when I realized that took all like science classes, I said, maybe not.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
Are you seeing people? Oh yeah.
I'm seeing it in the chat.
Okay, same. I just see 2 people though. Maybe you can see more than
Oh,
me.
wait, I see.
So I'm in the industry talks, and then I see Gaston and Doris commented. Um,
Uh, why am I seeing?
are you in the event and in the chat tab, like event chat? Because that's like the main chat. Then you can go
Oh,
to
gotcha. Yep. No, I just clicked on industry talks. Okay. Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I think we're gonna get started. Um, so welcome everybody. Thank you for coming today. This is the Industry Talk with Betty Francisco, business executive, attorney, and entrepreneur community leader. Before we get started, I just want to tell everybody to please be active in the chat. I see some people shouting out where they're from: Gaston, Doris, Devon, Teresa. Keep active in the chat. If you hear any points that you definitely agree with, make sure to hide it. Make sure to use that Q&A function under industry talks. If you go to the last little tab, it says Q&A. And as we go through this talk, I'll sort of pause and try to address everybody's question. And of course, there's cash prizes on the line. So the more you comment, the more likely you are to get those prizes. So just to start, my name is Arinze Uddoh. I'm a leadership brainery ambassador, and I go to Amherst College in Amherst, Massachusetts, which is just a few minutes outside of Springfield. I study economics and African studies. And yeah, I'm just excited to really explore not just the business industry, but just entrepreneurship and what it means to be an entrepreneur in this country, is be an entrepreneur of color, and just all the different categories that a lot of us identify with. Um, so I just want to introduce Betty Francisco. She is the CEO of Boston Impact Initiative Fund, the co-founder of Latina Circle Amplify Latinx, a member of the board of directors of Beth Israel Leahy Health, and an entrepreneur and angel investor. And I'm going to let her kind of explain everything, exactly what all of those roles entail. But yeah, we're so grateful to have you today, Betty.
It's great to be here, Arinze. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's just hop right into it.
Yeah.
The first question that I had is just, tell me about yourself. What's your why? What's kind of driven your career and guiding you to the place that you're at today?
Sure. Yeah. So, my why has often centered around how do I make this a better place for others that follow. And part of that is because, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be in the positions that I am or have had many of the opportunities without having had people that supported me along the way, and people that more importantly, opened a door, right? So they vouched for me. They advocated for me, they recommended me, and they believed in me. So, that's something I firmly believe we all have the ability and the responsibility to give back, always lifting as we climb. So that's sort of my why. My other why is really economic opportunity, right? So I grew up very modestly. My mom is Puerto Rican and my father's Chinese. I grew up in New York City, so I call myself a Chino Rican. And part of my childhood was spent in Puerto Rico on the island. And when I was about 11, came back to New York. And it wasn't a great, uh, childhood in some respects because we were pretty poor, lived in public housing, had to, basically had always this shadow of feeling like I never had enough. And how do I get out of my situation, right? What's the pathway out? So it was always this pathway to economic mobility for me and my mom. And education was a huge part of that. So, I firmly believe that without having had access to, a great college education and then post, uh, undergrad education, which what we're going to talk about that today, it wouldn't have opened, the doors for me that I've had, but also it wouldn't have let me break the cycle of poverty for my family. So that's a little bit about the drivers that motivated me, right? To use education as a path, to just even open up my own possibilities, because I didn't have a lot of role models. I didn't, know exactly which way what I should pursue. And it was because other people, kind of enlightened me and pushed me to think bigger and more broadly. So that's a little bit of the why.
That was awesome to hear. I think the two things that stuck out to me were family and education. I know, like, even though this is about you, like briefly talking about myself, I think having like a support system and just a strong like value system is very important for just like your self confidence and just being a person of color and like very like high achieving roles. Like imposter syndrome is something that I feel like we all go through. I know
Yeah.
for me, like without like having that family support system, it would have been like very, it would have been possible, just very, it was much more difficult to kind of make it through. And
Right.
then education, I just feel is like just the perfect avenue or the perfect medium to kind of like get to those higher places that you want to get to, or sort of like execute the vision that you might have had when you were 8, 10, 12 years old and just use it as a conduit to get up there. So
Yeah.
those are very excellent points and makes me even more excited for the other questions that I have.
Sure.
And you guys, like I said, you can ask questions as we go. If you hear a great point that she makes, make sure to be active and comment it. So the next question I have for you is what made you decide to attend graduate school and what do you believe is essential for underserved communities to access like higher education degrees like masters and doctorals? Um, yes, so we can start as that general question and then I have sort of sub questions, but I think you're going to hit most of the sub questions. So I'll just,
Okay. Yeah, so I went to undergrad at Bard College in upstate New York, and I studied history. So I started out wanting to study psychology because I thought it would be a great way to help my mom. My mom suffered from a lot of depression and anxiety when I was growing up. So I thought, what better profession to help her? But it had so much of a science component that I said, maybe not for me. So I started to study history. And that took me to this really interesting program in my junior year of college. It was at UT Austin, and it was part of this effort to get more Black and Latino students to pursue master's degrees, to pursue school, right, beyond college. And the lead professor in that program, it was a fellowship, they called it a fellowship, was he headed the Latino Studies Center at UT Austin. And one of the things that I learned from him was, to think much more bigger about what your current interests are. So I started to study immigration, immigration law and policy with him. So I basically ended up doing my thesis on agribusiness and the policies that drove illegal and legal immigration into the United States. It's what got me interested in studying law, because I thought through immigration policy I could help the people I saw in my community, right, that had a lot of injustices facing them, especially immigrant communities. So I thought law would be that pathway. And even though he was the person that exposed me to law, right, he said to me, Betty, the best thing you can do to open up opportunities in our communities is not to study law, but is to study business. Go to business school, get your MBA, start a business. And it was really interesting because I didn't have any exposure to that in my family. There were no entrepreneurs, right? I didn't know people that owned a business. But he, professor as he was, he owned an art gallery in Austin. He had another business. So he was what we call very successful professional, right? And I had never really seen that. So it opened up my eyes to, wow, there might be another path that I haven't explored yet. But I could, in the moment, I was really, at that age when you're young, you're like, nope, I want to do what I want to do, and I'm going to study law. So, and also because I was afraid of business, I didn't understand it. I didn't know what economics, involved. I wasn't thinking I was that great at math. And I thought, no way I'm going to do that. I'm just going to go down the law path and, change the world that way. So I ended up working 3 years after college at the New York County DA's office. Again, thinking I'm going to be a lawyer, maybe, pursue criminal law, immigration law. I immediately knew criminal law was not for me. I just saw, the justice system, the way it impacted our communities. I was like, I don't want to be a part of that. And I said, but I'm still going to go to law school. So I applied. I ended up at Northeastern University here in Boston. And I had a full scholarship. So I was really lucky that I had a full scholarship for undergrad, and I had a full scholarship for law school. So I came to campus, I came to Boston knowing no one. I had zero friends here. And Boston was a very hard city because at the time it was not as developed as it is today. Still very segregated, right? Coming from New York, super diverse city. So I thought there's no way I'm going to even stay in Boston. But I get on the Northeastern campus, and 3 days in, I see a sign and it says, get your JD MBA. And I thought, wow, there's such a thing that you can get your JD MBA. So I took the GMAT. I scrambled. I said, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to get 2 degrees. And the reason why that resonated is because that professor that I told you about that said business is the way you're going to change the world, because businesses create jobs. Businesses create generational wealth. Business owners, right, can break the cycle of poverty. I thought, wow, if I can combine law and business, wow, wouldn't that be an amazing, right, pathway? So I ended up doing the dual degree. And again, not a pathway I ever saw myself pursuing, but I got the opportunity to join a law firm, right, to go into big law, to be a corporate lawyer. And I decided at the time I was interested in venture capital, but I had to choose, right? I had to choose between practicing law or going into a business profession. And the way law firms recruit, right? They recruit straight from schools. So I thought if I didn't practice law now, I would lose the opportunity. So I ended up practicing law. So I went to a firm called Palmer and Dodge at the time, and was a corporate lawyer, basically doing venture capital transactions, mergers and acquisitions. I started during the height of the dot-com boom, which many of you weren't even born yet. And that's when like the whole internet was exploding. Thousands of startups were, being put up every day. And there was just a flurry of activity in the business sector. And so it, again, opened up tremendous opportunities. At the time, again, nothing that I ever thought I would be doing, because I have no no one in my family or my friends or their family and friends that could show me that pathway. I fell into it. But the dual degree really made a difference because it helped me understand business in a different way, right? So as a business lawyer, while you are executing transactions, the more effective ones understand business. They understand how businesses operate, what drives, them, how talent works. So, uh, I think a dual degree for those of you that are interested in doing that is definitely something to consider. And I'll stop there and then we'll keep talking and I'll tell you more about like my career path after that.
No, I'm not gonna lie. It really sounds like you kind of done it all, to be honest. Yeah, that was like a really like amazing story, and I think like similarly for me coming into Amherst, I also so I come from a family that's like very like into the medical field. So like the whole narrative was like, oh, go be a doctor, and it was just like I don't know, like chemistry, physics, it wasn't for me. So I came here and I was just like, let me do business. But Amherst doesn't have like a business track, so it was through economics that you kind of find your way into business. And for me, I was also like, yeah, I'm not like the best at math. I don't really know anything about economics, so it was very intimidating. But yeah, I think what the point you said about business like creates job. Like I feel like business is such like a it can be like a intimidating field, but such like a field full of opportunity because like knowing how to run a business, knowing how like an entity or how to run an institution, just using that knowledge and spreading it out to like communities that are underserved or just communities that need it most. Like that's such a valuable skill, and most of the time, there's a lot of quantitative stuff, but like the qualitative stuff is so it can be transferable to like different parts of life in general.
Right.
Um, but I
Yeah.
definitely resonate with what you said about that. Were you going to say something?
Yeah. No, I actually think, even if for those of you, if you're still in undergrad, taking some business classes, right? Even if that's not your major or your minor, are really valuable, right? Like I underestimated the value of understanding business, understanding entrepreneurship, understanding investing, right? Because at least me, I did not get taught those concepts in my home. I did not get taught those concepts in high school. Embarrassingly, I didn't even know how to write a check until I got to law school. Okay. So it was just, because even when I was in undergrad and working at the Gap, I would get a check and I'd go to a check cashing place. Right? Like I never had needed a bank account. And now I couldn't imagine even my children not having a bank account, right? So, but this is how I grew up, like very innocent, very naive, and I feel like I missed out, right? If I had gotten a leg up, so that's why I want to share this stuff with you, right? That pursue things that are going to be valuable to you later or even immediately. And understanding business is really, really critical. Understanding economics, our economy, right? We talk about capitalism and being like, this great driver of wealth. It's for our communities, it's been exploitative, right? So we have built this economy, it's been built on our backs. And understanding the history of that, understanding the history even of our institutions today is really critical in order to start to create newer systems that can dismantle inequities, right? That can drive change. Because all of you are going to be going into these, professions that are in environments that weren't created for us or by us. So, understanding how the levers of change, how you could drive new opportunity is going to be really, really key. So do you want me to share a little bit more like how I what sort of practiced and then transitioned to what I'm doing now?
Yeah, that would be great actually.
Yeah. So,
And, right, and even before you start, we even got a question from Tina Lee who asked, how did you know which sector of business you want to go to? So I think like this will answer that.
yeah, I mean, so like I said, I started as a lawyer, so I practiced for 8 years in a law firm, and that gave me the opportunity to work with businesses. So I was representing businesses, both public companies, private companies. The type of work that I was doing was very transactional, meaning a company would come to us, in the midst of raising capital, raising, say, a venture capital financing. And, I would get to know them, understand, them from a legal perspective, because I had to do due diligence on behalf of our investor clients. But through that work, would really get to know, the insides of these companies. Also, during that time, there were a lot of public offerings, right? So when you're doing a public offering, there's so many disclosures that you have to provide, that you also very much intimately understand the company, what drives it, what are its risk factors, how does it make money, and you have to explain that, right, in a public offering document. So that just helped me to really understand, the sort of get a 360-degree view, right, around corporations. And then about 8 years after practicing law in a firm, I got the opportunity to go in-house, right, to actually become the lawyer for a company and just represent that company. And it was called Sports Club LA, this set of health and fitness clubs. One of them was also Reebok Sports Club New York. And these were big luxury health and fitness clubs, about 106 clubs, but generating 100 million in revenue, 1,500 employees across the country. So it was really exciting because I was a member of the club in Boston. This is where I worked out almost every night. And it was like my haven, my safe haven, where I would go to just decompress and de-stress. And I thought, what better job could I have than to get to work for a place that I love going to. So I got the chance to go in house. I became their first general counsel, and the first general counsel, actually, they say in Massachusetts, that's Latina. So I didn't really even know that, but that was back in 2006. And I practiced there as their GC for 8 years and got to really learn the fitness and wellness industry, which I think plays a huge role, right, in when we talk about healthcare and health and wellness. I think the fitness sector plays this very key role in prevention. And so I took that pretty seriously, as far as, this is where the role that we can play in this much larger industry that we call healthcare. And so after 8 years, the clubs were sold. We sold them to Equinox Fitness. And at that point in time, I had been practicing law for 16 years, and I thought, I want to do something else, right? I had that MBA, but never really used it, right? So I said, I'm going to start my own business. And at the time, I had 2 young children, 2 young girls. And I saw this opportunity to do something in the fitness sector with families and with children. And I also, I realized here in Boston, which is where I am, there was a lack of really high quality fitness opportunities for families. And I was super interested in obstacles and obstacle racing. And if you guys are familiar with Spartan Race and Tough Mudder and Ninja Warrior and all of that stuff, I was like, this is the next wave, right, in fitness. So I started my own company called Reimagine Play, right? My goal was to open these Ninja Warrior gyms where families and kids could go to, just like the show, right, with all the cool steel frames and competitions. I mean, I had the business planned out. I even had the manufacturer ready to go, but I couldn't find a space. I couldn't find the 25-foot warehouse that I needed to open this up that was affordable. And I will just tell you, going into entrepreneurship is no easy feat. It is really hard to start a business, and I was starting it late in my life. But I gave it a good shot, right? Like I said, I'm going to do this for 2.5, 3 years. If I don't get to where I want to be, I'm going to do something else, right? So I gave myself this internal deadline. And at the same time that I was doing this entrepreneurship piece, I was also began investing. So angel investing, which I can share more, it's where as an individual, I'm investing in other startups and giving them that early money so that they could get off the ground. So I started doing that specifically to invest in women and entrepreneurs of color, because I realized then women, people of color are underfunded, right? Their entrepreneurs have a harder time raising capital because, again, discrimination, bias. It's not that there's a lack of capital, it's that there's barriers to us getting that type of capital. So I wanted to begin to break that cycle. So I started investing at the same time. So when I realized, hey, it may not be the right time to open these Ninja Warrior gyms, which I'm super glad I didn't, because COVID, during COVID, I would have been bankrupt because it would have been closed, right? But I started investing, and it took me down a very different path, right? Because I felt like my skill set now could be put to a really good use, supporting companies, guiding companies so that they could get off the ground and be successful. And so I ended up doing just that. Now, where I work, it's called Boston Impact Initiative Fund. It is a social impact investment fund that invests in local companies in Eastern Massachusetts that are owned and controlled by people of color or that support communities of color. And what's interesting about Boston Impact is that we invest what we call blended capital or integrated capital. So it's not just what you hear often in the news, VC money, right? So VC money is high growth equity capital for startups. Integrated capital will look at what do you need right now for your business in terms of where you want to go. So in the moment, you might need debt. You might need royalty finance or receivables finance. Maybe you do need equity, but maybe it needs to be longer term, more patient equity. So we use this blended capital approach to invest the type of financing that you need in the moment. So that's where I am now. I started that role in May, and it's been a complete, career shift from having been a lawyer for many, many years, now going into finance and into investing. And I love it. It's where I think I'm going to make the most impact, because I want to keep opening more doors for capital access for entrepreneurs of color. And that is exactly what we need, right? So that we can get more businesses off the ground.
Exactly, exactly. And even the point you were talking about how people of color and women, there are a lot of like barriers to entry and just access in general, to really like establish themselves in the industry. That kind of leads us into the next question. As a person of color, what is your approach to taking advantage of opportunities that aren't really freely given to you and opportunities that you have to really work for, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I mean, look, when I was I guess all throughout my career, I've always been an advocate, right, for increased representation of people of color, for opening up more opportunities and doors. So, as the advocate, I feel like things came to me, right? People actually started to come to me to say, "Hey, Betty, we're launching this program. Maybe it's a scholarship, maybe it's a leadership program." And they were looking to me because I had so many connections within my own community, right, to promote those things. So in doing that, I had the chance to take advantage of different things as well. um, so I would say that part of it is looking for opportunities actively, but also being a very active champion, right, for our own community as far as talent, right? Because I'm a huge like data person right now with the census, right, which has shown us that we're now a majority brown and black country, right? So and when you look at the talent that's coming up, it's young, it's Gen Z, it's millennial. We comprise almost half of the talent base in this country. So programs, opportunities, jobs have to evolve and adapt to accommodate us, right? It's always been the reverse. Like we have to contort ourselves to fit a role or to get opportunities. I think now we could actually be much more demanding of things that we want and we need. That's how I would frame it, Arinze. Like, I think this is in the moment that we're in, a really, really good time to be asking and being strong voices, whether you're still in school, whether you are now working, to be advocates around what you want and need to continue growing.
Yeah, and I totally, excuse me, I totally agree with all those points that you made. And one thing that like I want to add as well, and this is something that I talk about a lot with like my friends and just people in general, is obviously being a person of color, in these higher institutions and higher places can be very intimidating.
Mm.
I've been fortunate enough to come from like I would say like a pretty like solid like upbringing. Like I never had to worry about food on the table, things like that. Um, and I know like of people who like go to so I go to Amherst College, as I said earlier,
Yeah.
come to Amherst where people of color have come here and I really had to struggle, like really have to work from like come up and like grind to get to the places they're at here. And then they get to Amherst and then there's a sort of like complacency or like, oh, I've made it type of feeling.
Mm.
And like I understand that and all, but for me, it's just like I think that's not the right way to think because like college is like this bubble if you think about it. And obviously, like you should be super proud of yourself for making it up to this point, but it's like you still have to graduate and go into the real world and go through like those struggles that you kind of been talking about that we've kind of been discussing in this panel.
Mhm.
So I know for everybody that's in this talk right now, I think obviously all of Betty's points that she has made it's been obviously very fruitful. And I just also want to add that like it's not over once you get to college. Like there's still like another place to like level up, another place to advance. Like you have to keep going and obviously take care of your mental and do all that stuff, but don't become complacent too early because then it's like because the real world will hit. I'm sure COVID is showing all of us the real world will hit you like a brick and you
Yeah.
don't want to be caught off guard. So
Right.
that's wanted to
Yeah.
try.
I mean, you're right. You're right. Even in college, I went to Bard, which is a very tiny school. It's like I at the time it was no more than 850 students total. So everybody knew each other, uh, and I think it's still pretty small. But as a person of color, I was there through a scholarship program, higher education opportunity program, which kind of put us together, right? I'll put all the kids of color that were in this program in this like group, and we were both like it was good from a support perspective, but it also made us different, right? It singled us out a bit, and one of the things that was always really important was uh, being advocates, right? For not that we're special and we need help. It's not this victim narrative that we often see, but rather we're assets to this campus, right? We're bringing in different perspectives and a diversity of perspectives that you wouldn't otherwise get because of us, because of our presence. So I think it's, really important to as I know college can be really hard. That's difficult, right? You're away from home, and granted, I won't share all the many times that I wanted to leave and like never go back because I never felt like I belonged, right? But I belonged with my community there that supported me. And once we realized like, hey, we can actually drive the narrative here, you're unstoppable, right? Because people want to hear from you, but I think we often feel like we can't speak up or shut down. I think we have a tremendous door now more than ever, right? To be a really grounding voice and representative for our experience. Um, and I think in the workplace as well, more and more, the workplace is, whether you're in a large corporation to a small nonprofit, is being very, very sensitive to what are the needs of our employees, because everyone is in a war for talent. It's really, really hard, right, to recruit and retain diverse talent right now. Like you're actually really marketable. So workplaces need to adapt, right? To be flexible. We saw COVID, right, open this tremendous door for rethinking what should the workplace look like in terms of both talent but work conditions, flexibility, professional development. And we have to be at the forefront saying, here's what we want, here's the conditions we need to make really inclusive workplaces work for us.
100% agree with that. 100%. Yeah, we are very, as people of color, we're very valuable assets to our campus, to the workplace, and like just in general spaces. And, especially like obviously there was COVID, but even before that, with just all the instances of police brutality, like companies were really on their toes. Like there's a lot of pressure being applied.
Mhm.
I remember vividly being in recruiting into finance. I was like, yeah, like this is like as crazy as this time is, this is like you're so valuable at this point. And like that sort of mentality shift has just continued on to today. So
Yeah.
those were great points that you made, Betty.
And I'll
So
tell you that right now, because I'm recruiting for talent, right? So because I'm in finance, I have seen every organization needs an accountant, needs a controller, needs a finance person. More and more community groups are empowering themselves by saying, we want to control capital and allocate capital. So there's going to be this widening door of organizations that are going to be investing, right? So they're going to need people that know how to do that and have you know, the ability to recognize, opportunities to shape new kinds of ways to control the flow of money. I'll say, because we're in a digital economy, right? More and more digital skills, technology skills, and marketing skills are ultra important. Writing and communication, hugely important. So they sound pretty basic, but so it's like math and English, right? Like if you can arm yourself, even if it's a side class, you do it on Lydia, I don't care. Like get yourself, equipped with these skills because employers need them, and they're really hard to find. And so I think, we have opportunities to become marketable. So if I had to do it all again, I'll tell you, I if I had someone guiding me now and more role models, I probably would have studied business in undergrad. I would have minored in history because I think knowing history is super important. And then I would have gone straight to business school, right? And I don't know that I would have done law. That would be, not that I have regret. The law degree has been massively helpful. But I think if I could reinvent, I would just go straight to business.
yeah, that was really insightful because I know for a lot of what we're told, or from a lot of mentors that I've heard from, is that for business school, if you don't really have like that work experience after undergrad, it's kind of going to be hard to get into a competitive program. So they're sort of like, yeah, we'll work industry for a few years and then go into business school after, so you become more like employable or marketable.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's important to take a break. Yeah. I guess I should say, yes, try to work after undergrad if you can in a role that might give you a way to test out or sample what you think you're interested in. Right. Remember, I said I worked for 3 years at the DA's office thinking I wanted, maybe to do immigration or criminal law. And it validated that I did not. Right. So it gave me work experience. And it wasn't just the skills that I was acquiring, but it was more like, how do I navigate a work environment? How do you, in being sort of in a public, sector, which was the DA's office, it was more about how do you navigate political relationships? Because it's all political, meaning it's who determines whether you get the best work, right? Access to the best opportunities and get to work with the best, attorneys. Like that's when I say political, like you've got to know, you don't just put your head in the sand. You actually, what we think is super important, which is to work really hard and prove yourself. Yes, you have to do that, but you also have to know how to network and how to build relationships, right? All across organizations. So really, really important thing that nobody teaches us. No one says, oh, you've got to actually, be the social butterfly to some extent, right? To learns to um, sort of be a friend to everyone, so that you have an in to every department and can understand it, because that's ultimately how you move up.
Yeah, definitely networking and just interpersonal skills. Like again, like what I've seen in my like little experience and what I've been told, those are like so important just in general in moving up the ladder. I want to be conscientious of time. And obviously, if you guys have questions, just please use the Q&A function. But the last question I want to ask you is, what advice do you have for us to cultivate a network, as we were just talking about, to activate to really make an impact? And how did you grow your network in your graduate school and your current industry? So just, I guess, around networking and how do you
Yeah.
build network?
Well, I will say networking, and that was not a word when I was in college. Like, nobody said networking. No one taught me how to network. And I'll tell you the funniest story. So once I started working in a law firm, the partners, there was a venture capital conference, right? That they said, "Hey, Betty, we want you to go to this conference." And I think I was only a second year or third year associate at that point. So I go to this conference, and I get there and I'm one of the few women. Like, it was mostly men, right? And older men, older white men. So I'm this young, right, lawyer in this conference, and I'm told to network, which I wasn't sure what that was. So I had no idea, right? So people started, coming to me and talking, and I didn't even know what to say. So it's this intimidating, scary experience, right? And later I realized, because the partners were like, just go talk to them, tell them about our firm, tell them about the work you do. Again, it's not a natural thing, right? So I learned early on is networking is really personal. It's how do you build relationships? So to me, networking is building mutually um, beneficial relationships, right? That can help you advance your goals. So whether it's your career, whether it's helping your organization or business, maybe it's opening up doors for other people. It's how do think of it as how do you build relationships? And so whatever way that is natural to you is how you should do it. So what I realized is that I built relationships when I could create the spaces and control the narrative. So we're always told, go into somebody else's space and network, right? Go to a conference, go to something that's pre-planned. I said, I'm going to create my own space, which is how Amplify Latinx started. So when I was a lawyer, with another lawyer friend of mine, we created a networking series called the Latina Circle. So it was really, how do we get more opportunities to, as you're going up in through your career, you might feel like you're mentoring other people. Maybe you're getting mentored, but more importantly, who's championing you, right? Who is sponsoring you so that you can get to the next level? And sponsorship or championship is when someone goes to bat for you. Someone's recommending you for a role. Someone is actively telling you, you know what, giving your skill set, I think you would be really good for this board or this new opportunity or this leadership program that's going to propel you to another thing, right? That's what I call championing. Mentors guide you, but champions propel you. So I said, who's doing that for us? And no one really was at the time. So we formed this group called Latina Circle of women that had that same ethos of, I'm going to lift others as I climb. I'm going to open doors. I'm going to actively champion, recommend, right? And push more women, especially Latinas, into positions of power and influence so that we could drive change. So that little network, which started as 60 women, grew to 1,000 by 2016. And in 2016, we said, we need to be more politically active, more civically engaged so that we could drive a different kind of change. And we then started to include men. And developed a nonprofit around it called Amplify Latinx, which has a mission of building economic and political power for Latinos. So all of that work is what I'm trying to get to the point is that it was built on relationships, like creating a space for us to network with each other, to open doors, to give access to role models, right? That we wanted to meet. And so we controlled it. We controlled the whole space and narrative. And I want to put that on the table because you can create your own networking spaces, your own circles, and build your network that way. And that's why oftentimes now companies, corporations, organizations come to me and Amplify to say, hey, can you connect us to diverse Latino talent, right? Because we're looking for talent to work for us. We're looking for professionals to serve on boards or government commissions where, really important decisions are being made for us, but not by us, right? So we need more representation. We also need more representation in politics, right? In elected office. So we're actively championing all of that, but it's within our own circles, right? So that's what I would share. Like it is really key, right? To build those relationships. Do it with your classmates, right? So your classmates are going to be, in the long run, your biggest allies and champions and friends, right? That are going to, I think if you grow together and you keep in touch and you keep supporting each other, right? When you get to look 20 years from now, leverage all those relationships, right? That you have in school right now. There's some questions in the chat too. Do you want to see if I can get to them super quick?
Yeah, I've been told we have about 2 minutes. I was just gonna say if you guys have any additional questions, you could probably just share your email. I'll pin it in the chat. And you could also learn more about Betty at bettyfrancisco.com. But I think in 2 minutes we can answer the 2 questions. So one of the questions is just a quick one. Does your firm invest in businesses that are not located in Boston?
No. So we don't. We invest in Eastern Mass. So everything from Worcester East, we will invest in, but it has to be Massachusetts. Yeah. And then, how did you know which sector of business you wanted to go into? So I knew I wanted to work with small businesses because that's where I felt that I could use my background and training as a lawyer, right? A lot of what I did was work with startups in terms of incorporation, getting them off the ground. How do they raise capital? That's where I felt like I could be most useful, because it's not just, as an investor, you're not just giving money capital, you're also providing knowledge capital, right? How the knowledge you need to successfully run a business, and social capital, which is those relationships and networks that we just talked about. Because oftentimes you as the investor might need to open the door to a potential customer, right? And or a partnership. So, that's where I felt like I could best be of service to small businesses.
Most definitely. I just wanted to thank you so much for taking your time today to speak to us. I'm sure all 21 of us in this chat appreciated all the insight that you gave. I dropped Betty's website in the chat, bettyfrancisco.com, and be sure to connect with Betty on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you guys for coming out. I'm glad we had a good attendance. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the summit. And I'll stay with you a little after.
It's great to be here, Arinze. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you so much, Betty. Thank you so much, Arinze. Incredible conversation.
Yeah, no problem. All right.
Y'all have an amazing rest of your Saturday. We're headed back to the main stage.
We're going back to the main stage? Cool.
Yes.
See you there.
See you there.